I am 98% certain that I was wearing this exact same shirt in my very first anticipated releases video. Hi everyone, my name is Jenny and I'm back today with another video. Today I'm going to be chatting through my anticipated releases for April, May, and June of 2021. This is one of my favorite videos to do. I really enjoy keeping up with anticipated releases, so I have quite a few to talk about today. So as always with my anticipated releases videos, I'm not going to go into a ton of depth about any of these books, but I will be sure to create a list, probably on bookshop.org, of all the books in case you want to check them out for yourselves or learn more. Without further ado, let's just get into the books. I think there's about like 32 of them, so as I said, we're gonna be going through them relatively quickly so this video is not absurdly long. So starting in April, the first Tuesday in April is the 6th of April, and the first day of the month, the first Tuesday of the month, always seems to be a big pub day. I feel like I have a lot of books on the first of each month that are coming out. So I have 4 books that are coming out on April 6th that I'm intrigued about. The first of those is Call Baby by Morgan Jerkins. This is coming out from Harper and is Morgan Jerkins' debut fiction novel. I actually have one of her nonfiction works, which is Wandering in Strange Lands, that I'm really excited to get to, but this fiction novel also sounds really up my alley. It's about 2 Black families living in New York City and about the kind of familial relationships and gentrification, and I think there's also some speculative like magical elements. I also really enjoy the cover of this one, so excited about that. And then another one I'm excited about is The Duke Undone by Joanna Lowell. This is coming out from Berkeley and is a historical romance novel that is following a female artist who finds a duke in a very compromising position in an alley. He's apparently naked and she kind of saves him from the potential ruin that would come with being naked in an alley at this time. And I think because of that, she and him kind of form a relationship, and I think she also paints him maybe. I'm intrigued about this one. I feel like it has the potential to be kind of a humorous historical romance and pretty lighthearted based on the plot. I also appreciate that it's taking the like societal ruin trope of like why a couple has to get together and kind of twisting it on its head for the man to be the one who's like potentially going to have societal ruin brought upon him. So that sounds pretty fun. I'm definitely intrigued about it, especially if it's like a book of the month book or something. I would probably pick it up and read it that way. Also on April 6th, we have The Cost of Knowing by Brittany Morris, who I have read previously. I read A Song Below Water last spring, I believe, and this one is coming out from Simon Schuster YA Books, and is a YA book, obviously, about a Black teen who can see into the future, and he sees that his younger brother is set to die at some point during his teenage years, and so he kind of is dealing with the ramifications of that, and I believe probably trying to stop that from happening. And so I believe this touches a lot on like police brutality, the kind of ways in which Black teens in the United States have to come of age a lot earlier because of racism and white supremacy, and just kind of a lot of themes related to that. So it sounds like a very heavy read, but definitely one I'm intrigued about, particularly as I kind of see more people talking about it, as I feel like this will probably be a pretty popular one in the like YA spheres of booktube. So definitely at the very least be intrigued to see other people talking about this one, but I may pick it up for myself at some point as well, just depending on if I'm feeling like a YA book. YA books are not usually my cup of tea. I read them on occasion, but I do sometimes enjoy picking them up, and this is one that I feel like I could potentially want to read. And then finally, the last one coming out on April 6th is one I have an advanced copy of, and that's Love in Case of Emergency by Daniela Krein. This is coming out from Harper Via and is a translated work, translated from the German, and was translated by Jamie Bullock. And this one was blurbed as similar to Sally Rooney, and is about 5 women living in Germany and kind of dealing with different elements of womanhood, I think, as they're all kind of experiencing different life events, and I think they're related in some way. And so it's talking about their interpersonal relationships as well as I think some of their romantic relationships. Sounds like the type of book that I would enjoy, and I definitely have a dearth of translated fiction in my reading, so I'd love to remedy that, and I definitely will be remedying that since I do have an advanced copy of this one. So another one I'm excited about. Also, I really enjoy the cover. Then on April 13th, I have one book that's coming out that I'm intrigued about, and I actually also have an advanced reader's copy of this one, which is Low Country, A Southern Memoir by J. Nicole Jones. This is coming out from Catapult and is, as the title suggests, is J. Nicole Jones's memoir of growing up in the Low Country region of South Carolina, and I believe discusses a lot about her family's wealth, but also familial relations more broadly. From the description of the novel, it sounds like her family at times had a lot of wealth, but at the same time also had a lot of debt, and so there's kind of a lavish lifestyle that they were leading that I assume came tumbling down at some point. I also saw that Emma Copley Eisenberg blurbed this one and really enjoyed it and its way of kind of creating a place and discussing the complexities of that place, which are both things that I really enjoy. And I thought Emma Copley Eisenberg did well in The Third Rainbow Girl, so I'm excited to see that here. So this one's one that I will be reading very soon, and I actually will be doing a vlog of this one along with another book that I will point out shortly. but I'm super excited about this one. Definitely one that I will be getting to sooner rather than later. And then on April 20th, I also have 4 books, so that's another big day. The first of which is another YA book, which is Kate in Waiting by Becky Albertalli. This is coming out from Balzer and Bray, and again, I don't read a ton of YA, but this one does intrigue me because I do like Becky Albertalli. She lives here in Atlanta, and she sets a lot of her books here in Atlanta, which I really appreciate. I feel like she has a very good grasp of like living and being from Atlanta. I've always found that to be true in all of the books that I've read from her. This one, I don't really know that much about it, except that it follows a female main character, which I think this is one of the first times she's written a like female lead character, so I'm intrigued about that element as well. I think this has something to do with like musical theater, which seems to be a big part of her books. I assume that she probably was a part of that in high school maybe, because it's a large part of her books. I wasn't a part of musical theater, but both of my sisters were, so I'm familiar with that world, and I do find it intriguing sometimes to read about. That's really all I have to say about that one. I also have a short story collection, which actually is a common theme throughout these books, because I guess I'm just in a short story type mood. They're really appealing to me right now for some reason, which I'm not entirely sure why, but I do have a number of them on this list. The first of those also comes out on April 20th, and it's Are You Enjoying by Mira Sethi. This is coming out from Knopf, and the stories are set in Pakistan or discussing the Pakistani diaspora at large, and the author is apparently an actress as well as a writer, which is intriguing to me. I don't know if these stories will be good, but that was like the first thing that I saw on her Wikipedia page, which I am very intrigued about. Also, Pakistan is a part of the world that I am also intrigued about, so excited to get to these stories at some point. And then because April 20th is the closest Tuesday to Earth Day, which is April 22nd, there were 2 books that were about the environment that I was intrigued about. The first of which is one that I do have an advanced copy of, which is the other book that I'll be reading in that blog along with Low Country, and that's Overheated: How Capitalism Broke the Planet by Kate Arnoff, and this is coming out from Bold Type Books, but I usually have pretty good success with Bold Type Books. They publish books that definitely have very progressive minded politics at the center of their books, but I feel like all the authors that I've read from so far that are under the Bold Type Books imprint really have a strong grasp of like the importance of evidence and citing that evidence, and I've also heard good things about them in terms of fact-checking their work, which is something that is obviously very important in nonfiction. And actually I read a really interesting article that I think I've mentioned previously on the channel that was by Emma Copley Eisenberg again, about fact-checking in trade publishing and how that's actually not as common as you might think, or it's something that is put upon the authors and less so something that the editorial team is like super on about, which is really interesting. But Bold Type Books actually, if I remember correctly, is the one that she pointed out as an imprint that actually does have that as like a natural part of their editing process, which is good to me because I think it's important to fact check your work. But to get specifically into this book, this, as it says from the subtitle, is a nonfiction book about capitalism and its relationship to climate change, and I think also kind of neoliberal politics. Obviously climate change is something that I'm really interested in, and I do think the relationship between climate change and capitalism and economics more broadly is a very interesting one. But then the other like environmentally related book that I saw that's coming out on April 20th is Stop Saving the Planet: An Environmentalist's Manifesto by Jenny Price. This is out from W.W. Norton, and I believe is a critique of the way that climate change and environmentalism has been framed around personal responsibility as opposed to corporate and governmental responsibility, and how all the different things that people are doing in terms of personal responsibility for the environment are not actually making a huge difference, which is definitely an argument, and kind of I've seen data that backs that up. But I'd be intrigued to kind of see her argument around that and the kind of evidence that she brings. And also this one is super short, so I'm hopefully going to get to this one sooner rather than later. Also, the cover of this one is really fun. Then moving on to April 27th, I have 2 books that I'm intrigued about. The first of which is White Magic by Elisa Washuda. This is coming out from Tin House Books and is a nonfiction collection of essays that are interconnected. Elisa Washuda is a member of the Cowlitz people in the Pacific Northwest region of the United States, and these essays, according to the blurb, touch on ideas of the land, heartbreak, and colonization. So sounds really engaging. I really like the cover of this one as well, and I know Elisa Washuda was actually one of the editors on the Shapes of Narrative Nonfiction, more kind of academic essay book, which is another one I've been intrigued about. So I'm excited to kind of see her in what I believe or hope to be a kind of more like personal essay form as opposed to academic essays, although academic essays are interesting as well. And then one of my absolute top, probably the most excited I am for any book on this list. We have Whereabouts by Jhumpa Lahiri, which is also coming out from Knopf on April 27th. And this is Jhumpa Lahiri's latest novel that she originally wrote in Italian in 2018 and is finally being translated by Jhumpa Lahiri because she is a queen into English and being published here in the United States. And I'm sure I'm one of millions of people who are very excited about this one. I read a blurb of it that she published in the New Yorker back in January, I think, or maybe February. And it was really good. I'm really intrigued about it. I think she is very talented and I'm excited to see her translating into English from the Italian, as I feel like that's a really interesting concept of translating your own work, particularly given that English is her first or second language. It's the language that she kind of was originally writing in, and so it's intriguing to me that she decided to be the translator for her own work, which was not true of her nonfiction book that I read last summer that was also written in Italian. She had Anne Goldstein translating it. So yeah, excited about this one. Don't really know anything about it, but I am going to read it regardless. Then moving on into May, we have, again, the first Tuesday of the month is a big publication day, so I have another 4 books to talk about. The first of which is The Most Beautiful Girl in Cuba by Chanel Cleeton. This one is coming out from Berkeley, and it's another one in her like Cuba historical romance series. This one is set during the Gilded Age in Cuba, and I believe is set both in New York but also in Cuba. I really enjoy Chanel Cleeton's romances, although I've not read the third one that came out last summer, so I will probably read that one before I read this one, but I am intrigued about this one nonetheless. I think this one also includes some like spy elements, it sounds like, from the blurb, which I really enjoyed in the second one of this series, which was When We Left Cuba. So again, excited about this one. We'll hopefully be getting to it at some point, or at least getting to the third one very soon. Also on the 4th, we have The Parted Earth by Anjali Enjeti, which is coming out from Hub City Press. And this is another one that I think I've talked about a few times on my channel that is a kind of multi-generational family saga that begins with the partition in India and Pakistan in 1947 and continues all the way until basically the present day here in Atlanta. So again, 2 buzzwords for me of like partition of India in 1947 is an area of great interest to me and like a time period that I've studied in a few different classes. And then also Atlanta is a place that obviously I call home, and so I enjoy reading about it. So super excited about this one as well. I think it has some kind of familial relationships, those types of typical themes in a family saga that I also always appreciate. So definitely another one that I'm super excited about. And then another one that I've been seeing quite a lot on other people's anticipated releases, particularly again in the like YA sphere of booktube, so I feel like this will be a pretty buzzy one. That's The Ones We're Meant to Find by Joan He. This is coming out from Roaring Brook, which is a YA imprint of Pan Macmillan, and this one is a science fiction YA book about sisters and their relationship, but also about climate change / environmental protection, as I think all of the people left on Earth like live on an island, and it's the only place that's like inhabitable left on Earth, but her sister lives somewhere else. I'm intrigued about it. I definitely enjoy obviously reading books that focus on climate change / the environment, and also the cover of this one is just like absolutely beautiful. So one that I will probably actually be reading sooner rather than later, despite the fact that, as I've said previously in this video, I don't read a ton of YA, but this one is intriguing me quite a bit. And then the last one coming out on May 4th is another one I have an advanced copy of, which is Sorrowland by Rivers Solomon. This is coming out from MCD, which is an imprint of FSG, and to be honest, I don't understand from the blurb what this one is about, but I do know that River Solomon is absolutely brilliant. All of their ideas in terms of the kind of larger thematic explorations of their novels are just so fascinating. Like the first one was a like spaceship that recreated the society of the antebellum South. That was really interesting. The next one, The Deep, is about pregnant enslaved Africans who are traveling to America, who were thrown overboard because they were pregnant and they become mermaids. Like the discussions of racism and the history of racism in America that Solomon uses in their books is really fascinating, although every time I've been kind of a little disappointed by the actual like plot and development of the plot. Although each book that I've read both of the previous books, the plot and kind of cohesion as a novel came together a little more for me than the previous one did, so I'm hoping that this one will be a success, even though I don't know what it's about. I also know that Roxanne Gay read it and gave it 5 stars on Goodreads, which is usually a pretty good sign. So excited about this one. Again, we'll be reading it sooner rather than later because I have an advanced copy, so look forward to hearing my thoughts and also me in the future explaining to all of us what this book is actually about. Then I have one May 11th release, which is While Justice Sleeps by Stacey Abrams. This one is coming out from Doubleday, and I love Stacey Abrams. She is my icon, obsessed with her, and this is a political thriller about a Supreme Court case, and it sounds like the medical field and some conspiracies and some political corruption, all sorts of fun stuff. I'm really excited about this one. I feel like Stacey Abrams would write a political thriller really well because her life in politics has been thrilling so far in terms of all the racism here in Georgia. So yeah, excited about this one. We'll definitely be reading it sooner rather than later. Then on May 18th, there are 3 books I'm intrigued about. The first is Mr. Impossible by Maggie Stiefvater. This came out from Scholastic and is the second in the Dreamer trilogy, which is the continuation of the Raven Cycle quartet, I guess. Yeah, there's 4 books in the Raven Cycle, which I have read in the past, really enjoy these books. I read them when they come out. I don't know what this one's about, and I wouldn't be able to tell you because it's the second book in like a second series. So yeah, excited about this one. I feel like a lot of people who already know about Raven Cycle, Maggie Stiefvater, are aware of this, so I don't need to harp on it all that long. The cover of this one, just like Called on the Hawk, I hate them. They're very ugly. Also on May 18th is Ophi's Ghost by Justina Ireland. This is coming out from Balzer and Bray, and it's a historical middle grade novel about Ophi, who has to flee Georgia in the 1920s after her father was killed. It sounds like somewhat mysteriously, perhaps by the Ku Klux Klan / another racist body of white men. And so she has to flee from Georgia to Pittsburgh to live with some family there, and her mom becomes a maid in a white upper middle class family's household, and I believe there are ghosts that Ophi realizes that she can see and speak to, and so she kind of goes on an adventure in terms of helping the ghosts come and like seek revenge or kind of resolve any issues that happened around the time of their death. So I feel like that could have some really interesting themes, especially as a middle grade, so I'm really intrigued about this one. Also, the cover is adorable. I love Ophi. She's the cutest little girl ever. I will definitely be checking this one out from the library and reading it shortly after it comes out. Then finally, the last one on May 18th is Unsettled Ground by Claire Fuller, which is also coming out from Tin House, and I also have an early copy of this one, so I'll be reading this prior to its publication date. And this one was recently longlisted, actually just like last week in this last video I posted, so I'll put a link to it up in the cards above, for the Women's Prize long list. And I have been meaning to read Claire Fuller for quite a while. I feel like all of her books sound vaguely intriguing to me, so I thought this would be a good place to start since it's coming out soon and it's longlisted for the Women's Prize. And this is a literary novel about 2 adult siblings who have been living with their mother in a very isolated cottage in England, and their mother dies, and I think after her death they're coming to terms with like what they should do in terms of the cottage and their livelihoods, and also I believe they're also learning some stuff about their mother's past that they may not have known. So it sounds really intriguing. I also heard someone who I don't remember, it might have been Eric Carl Anderson, now that I'm thinking about it, but I'm not entirely sure, mentioned that this book is really atmospheric and has very like place-based descriptions of the setting are kind of very central to the novel, which is always something that I appreciate. And then on May 25th I have 2 books, the first of which is another one that I have an advanced copy of, which is Revival Season by Monica West, and this is coming out from Simon & Schuster, and this is a debut literary fiction novel about a young woman whose father is a somewhat evangelical Baptist who goes on kind of a road trip throughout the South doing these massive healing services, and the blurb said some act of violence kind of sets our main character Miriam on a journey to kind of come of age but also discover more truths about her father and perhaps her family, and also kind of come to terms with her faith and her family relationships, all of which just sounds so good. So I'm super excited about this one, really glad that I have an advanced copy, and definitely will be reading this one very soon. And then also on May 25th we have Down East by Gigi Georges. This is coming out from Harper, and it's a nonfiction book that, as the subtitle says, is about 5 girls who I believe are all teenagers who are living in a very rural part of Maine. Granted, Maine is a very rural place in general, but I believe in the very northwest corner of Maine, very close to Canada. And this book is a mixture, it sounds like, of these kind of personal narratives while also compiling a lot of kind of statistical data and more quantitative data about rural life and small town life in general, and kind of making some commentary on the future of rural and small town life in America, which sounds really kind of up my alley. Excited about this one. We'll get to it at some point probably. And then finally, moving moving into June, you'd think that we're most of the way through this video, but there's a lot of books coming out in June, so we got a ways to go, people. But starting on the 1st of June, again, another big first Tuesday of the month pub day, the first of which that I'm intrigued about is The Chosen and the Beautiful by Nevo. This is coming out from Tor, and again, another one that's pretty buzzy here on BookTube, I feel like. And this is an adult fantasy reimagining of The Great Gatsby that follows a queer Asian protagonist who is Jordan Baker in The Great Gatsby original story. I don't really know that much else about the plot, although I have heard that it very closely follows The Great Gatsby in terms of plot, but I'm intrigued about that. The Great Gatsby is probably one of my favorite classics. I find it really interesting, and so that is one that I've actually read several times. So The Great Gatsby, I'm excited to kind of see it reimagined in a new way. Another June 1st release is The Other Black Girl by Zakiya Dalila Harris, and this is coming out from Atria Books, and it's another debut novel that is apparently Devil Wears Prada meets Get Out, which just sounds great. I don't know how else to put that, but it's about, more specifically, a young woman working in the publishing industry, and she is one of the very few women of color or even people of color working in her particular company, and I believe one of the other women of color kind of starts warning her and giving her these kind of secretive coded messages about how she needs to like leave this place because it's not safe for her, and stuff starts to go down after that. I'm intrigued. Think it'll be a really buzzy book, like big marketing push on this one, so I could definitely foresee this one being like a book of the month pick or something like that, and I will likely read it that way. Next up is Lesson in Red by Maria Hummel, which is coming out from Counterpoint Press, and this is a companion novel to Still Lives, which is a thriller that I read several years ago and really enjoyed, so I'm excited to kind of see a companion novel to it. I believe it follows the same main character as Still Lives, and is another like mystery that's set in the art museum world, which I thought was a really interesting setting in Still Lives. I feel like Maria Hummel in that book had a lot of interesting commentary about the art world, and I feel like it made for a really interesting mystery setting, so I'm excited about Lesson in Red as well. And then I do have one advanced copy that's coming out on June 1st, which is Bewilderness by Karen Tucker. This is also coming out from Catapult and is a debut novel set in rural, poverty-stricken North Carolina and centers on a female friendship and the opioid crisis / addiction in general. And it's been likened to Marlena by Julie Bunton, which is one of my least favorite books of all time. Like, I really did not like that book at all, but I can understand from the plot or from like what the blurb is about, the similarities between the two. I just hope the writing style is different, but we're gonna see, because if the writing style is similar, I'm not sure I'll be able to handle it, but it does otherwise sound like one that I would really enjoy, and I am excited to give it a try. And then finally on June 1st is One Last Stop by Casey McQuiston. This is coming out from St. Martin's Griffin, and definitely another very buzzy book in terms of like anticipated releases in the like popular booktube community. This is Casey McQuiston's sophomore novel. It's a female romance. One of the girls time travels on a subway, maybe. I don't really understand that part of the premise, but it sounds fun. I will read it regardless, and I know that my sister, who recently read Red, White, and Royal Blue, will also want to read this one. Then on June 8th, I have two books that I'm excited about. The first of which is the very first book that I actually requested a physical copy from the publisher, and I was successful, which is exciting, which is Animal by Lisa Taddeo. This one is Lisa Taddeo's debut fiction novel. She wrote Three Women 1 or 2 years ago, and I really enjoyed that one, and I feel like this is a kind of novelization of very similar topics of women and power dynamics and desire and abusive / manipulative relationships. Sound like a lot of kind of central tenets of this novel, and I believe it also is about a woman who is seeking revenge on men by killing them. Sounds fun! And this one is out from Avid Reader Press, so thank you so much to Avid Reader Press for sending me this physical copy. Then also on June 8th, The Jasmine Throne by Tasha Suri is coming out from Orbit, and this is an adult fantasy with a female like romantic element to it that is based on the history / epics of India. Don't know a ton else about that, or like more specifically what aspects of Indian history it is pulling from, but I do know that Tasha Suri's debut duology series was set around Mughal India, which is a very interesting time period. Again, one that I've learned some about in my undergrad degree. So I do feel like she kind of picks interesting elements of Indian history to pull from in her novels, so I'm excited about this one. Should be fun. Then on June 15th, I also have two books I'm interested in. The first of which is The Wisteria Society of Lady Scoundrels by India Holton. This is another romance coming out from Berkeley that is set in the Victorian period and is about a female thief who's a member of the wisteria society and an assassin who I believe works for a pirate, and I think the female lead's aunt goes missing. I don't know, it sounds kind of hijinksy and fun, and obviously there's a romance at the center of it. I'm hoping that it will be a like self-contained romance, because I did read a Berkeley kind of bit more speculative historical romance last November called The Bright and Breaking Sea, and it wasn't like a, I want to say closed circle romance, but I don't think that's the right terminology, but a romance that like they get their happily ever after at the end of this book and not at the end of the series, which I much prefer a book where it's like self-contained and then the next book we follow a different couple, and I can't entirely tell what the story is going to be with this one, but I'm excited about it nonetheless. And then also on June 15th is Sight Fidelity Stories by Clara Boyles. This is also coming out from W.W. Norton, and it's another one I have an advanced copy of. As you can see, I was into the short stories, and these are feminist stories, or stories that center women in the American West, and I think also talk a lot about issues of environmental change and degradation. So excited again about these ones. Definitely will be reading them before their publication date, likely in a vlog along with another book that I'll mention in just a minute. And then on June 22nd, we have two other books that I'm excited about. The first of those is God Save the Girls by Kelsey McKinney. This is coming out from William Morrow, and will be an interesting counterpart, I think, to Revival Season, because they sound very similar in their premises, except God Save the Girls is, I believe, about white characters, and Revival Season, I don't believe I mentioned this, but it's about a black family. So there will be some interesting, I think, religious dynamics between white and black people in America discussed in these two books, if I so choose to read them kind of in tandem. But God Save the Girls is about an evangelical preacher and his two daughters, and I believe something comes to light about the father, and so they have to kind of come to terms with that, and also probably have some like coming of age stuff to do. So another one that I'm intrigued about. This one I believe is set in Texas, so again, another southern family that is involved in evangelicalism. Sound intriguing. Then another one of the books on this list that I'm absolutely the most excited for is Filthy Animal Stories by Brandon Taylor. This is coming out from Riverhead, and I actually have an advanced copy of this one courtesy of NetGalley, and this is Brandon Taylor's debut short story collection. He wrote Real Life last year, which was one of my favorite books of the year, and a number of these stories feature creatives in the Midwest, which I think will be really interesting. I love Brandon Taylor. I've read one of his previous short stories that was published in the Kink Stories anthology and thought that one was phenomenal, so I'm really excited to see him take on the short story form in a number of different short stories. So really excited about this. We'll definitely be reading it very soon. And then on June 29th, we have our last two books, the first of which is, you guessed it, yet another short story collection, and this is Objects of Desire by Claire Sestanovich, maybe? And this is coming out from Knopf. And this is about women and their desire as it manifests at different points throughout their lives, I believe. And again, I'm into short stories. This one sounds cool. I will probably check it out. And then last but not least, or maybe least, because I'm not sure how eager I will be to get to this one, because again, it's another YA book. This is The Poison Heart by Kaylin Barron. This is coming out from Bloomsbury YA. It is a contemporary YA fantasy about a black teenage girl who can grow plants by the touch of her hands. So there's some cool plant magic, and I believe some kind of sketchy people start asking around and like trying to get her plant magic. Sounds intriguing. I know that this author also wrote another YA like science fiction fantasy book that I don't remember what it's called, but it's been pretty popular on the like YA spheres of booktube, and people seem to enjoy it, so hopefully this one will also not disappoint. Also, the cover of this is really quite beautiful, so one that I'm intrigued about. Maybe I'll get to it someday. I'm not sure. Okay, so I've been talking for quite a long time. That was a lot of books to get through. Do let me know if any of those books are books that you are interested in down in the comment section below. Additionally, if you are new to my channel, I'd love to have you stick around and subscribe, and I will talk to you next time.